Interested in collaborating with the esSENSE Global? Register your information using the QR code provided below.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. So, hope you've all had your refreshments. So, welcome to Fallacies in Everyday Life. First of all, I'd like to place and record thanks to esSENSE Global as well as the organizers of RenaiesSENSE 2024 for giving me this opportunity to be here today. So today I'm here to tell you the story of Dan and the Dons. Dan is our hero and the Dons or fallacies are our villains. So meet Dan, he is a fallacy detective. So what are fallacies? Although there are competing definitions for practical purposes of today's discussion, fallacies are errors in reasoning. So all of us might have come across a beautifully constructed, persuasive argument in our daily life, which when you look closely or examine from all the sides, you will notice a gap in the logic. The first known systematic study of fallacies was done by Aristotle in his work Sophistical Refutations, in which he identified 13 fallacies. And from then on, the saga continued. And now, in Dan's anti-fallacy toolkit, there is more like a master list of 200 plus logical fallacies. This is a living list, and it goes on expanding. So, I'm sure some of you must be familiar with the popular names of fallacies like ad hominem, straw man, red herring, bandwagon fallacies, and so on. So, why is Dan sharing his story with us today? What are his objectives? His primary objective is to recharge the skeptic in us. So, many of you here today, like I mentioned, are already aware of fallacies. Often, but when you are having a casual conversation, when the other person presents an argument, you might notice something fishy, but you may not be able to call it out or put a finger on it. So, by having a fallacy refresher, let's do a recap, familiarize with their names, practice, so that we'll be able to call out and address it. And a subsequent goal definitely is once you've spotted them, you also need to know how to counter it or how to tackle it. So, this needs a polishing of our anti-fallacy toolkit. And the last goal is that we often feel like fallacies are like an alien concept or a distant concept. We are not going to fall for them. But we need to recognize the importance and the prevalence, how rampant fallacies are in our daily life. So, talking about identifying these dons or fallacies, let us look at a typical day in Dan's work life. So, the case goes like this. A man is sick and is diagnosed with HILI, herb-induced liver injury. And his doctor suspects that this has to do something with the detox drink, a detoxification drink he has been consuming, believing that it would boost his immunity. Now, Dan's job here is not to investigate crimes or murder of real people. He investigates the murder of logic. So, who persuaded or what persuaded this man to consume this drink? Who killed his logic? So, Dan looks for clues from the crime scene. Clues means faulty arguments. Okay? So, he notices the label on the drink, on the detox drink. So, it says this Acharya Maitreya's miracle solution. So, whenever we see such references to gurus or traditional practices, it seems to add credibility to the product without any scientific evidence. So, this fallacy is termed as appeal to authority. So, if you see the rest of the description, you will see there are some keywords sprinkled like all natural, Ayurvedic inspired, the goodness of the Himalayan herbs. So, all these are making an appeal to nature, which is another fallacy. Also, there is a slight mention of chemophobia, saying no harsh chemicals, no side effects, which qualifies as an appeal to fear. And at last, there is a nudge, saying 6 out of 7 consumers have brought this drink or they do recommend this drink, which is an appeal to popularity or otherwise known as the bandwagon effect. So, now using these clues, Dan is able to build up a strong case against these suspects. So, now as you may have noticed, each fallacy or a crime lord has a particular style of operation, otherwise known as modus operandi. So, Dan's toolkit has a detailed reference manual on the characteristics of each of these dons. Let us look at some of these examples. Strawman fallacy. To develop tourism in the state of Kerala, a visionary said, or let's say a proposal has been made, that we need to have a well-developed nightlife. so that we can attract more tourists and techies. So it makes sense because when somebody visits Kerala for 4 or 5 days, we are only able to engage them during the daytime hours if we are shutting down our shops by 10 or 11 p.m. And we are missing out on opportunities to cash out on the revenue. So, but on hearing nightlife, if your first trigger is that, oh, you want our people to become alcoholics. Now, this is a classical example of strawman fallacy. Yeah, so this is a classical example of strawman fallacy where you are misrepresenting the initial robust argument so that it makes it easier to dismiss. Now, how do we counter this? You can call it out, explain why this is a fallacy, and bring the person back and emphasize the original point. Another example, when a person puts forward a concern regarding growing unemployment in India, if the response is saying, but in recent years we have had remarkable developments in infrastructure. This is an example of a red herring where you are diverting or misleading from the original point of discussion. So you can think of the term red herring as a dried fish product, which has a strong stench or a smell. This has been originally used to train hounds or sniffer dogs. So the actual track of the evidence, the original evidence will be like dragged along a track, and this red herring will be dragged along a cross track, and the sniffer dogs need to distinguish what is the scent of the evidence. So coming to the counterpoints or how to tackle it. Again, this fallacy is like a fallacy of irrelevance. So you question the relevance and get back to the original point. Next slide. So what is common among these 4 persons apart from the fact that they are successful? They are all college dropouts. So does this mean you need to be a backbencher or you need to be a college dropout to be successful? That would be like drawing a conclusion from insufficient evidence or a biased evidence. So another example could be, so this is an example of hasty generalization. Another example could be that claiming, I think everybody here must have definitely heard of it. You must have heard like older generations were healthier than us. So this is stemming from a survivorship bias because we are only seeing the survivors, the healthy survivors, and not the people who passed away, unfortunately. How do you counter it again? So you strive to have representative sampling and increase your evidence space. Now, moving on. Let's look at this example. A family is preparing to send their son off to study at Bangalore. A typical scenario is that a distant relative or a so-called well-wisher will walk in. And the question will be, oh, you're sending him away from home to a city. And once he get exposure to city life, he might get a girlfriend, he will go to pubs with her, or he will have drugs and he will end up ruining your life. Why not keep him safe at home? So this is an example of a slippery slope where meaning an initial action is claimed to trigger a chain of reactions leading to an extremely unfavorable outcome at the end. And often the end outcome is coupled with an appeal to fear or appeal to hate. You might say, okay, what if he brings home a random girl? So how do you counter this? So since it's a chain, you break the flow or look for any missing links in the chain. And also you check for the probability. What is the probability of one step happening after other? So if you keep on accumulating this, the final probability might be very less. Next comes ad hominem. So when a person claims that, let's say, alternate medicine is unscientific. So if your response is, oh, you are in bed with Big Pharma. So consider this argument, think again. This is not attacking the argument. This is attacking the person who raised the argument. Again, how do you counter this? So again, question relevance and also ask, okay, maybe if it had not come from me, this argument, if it had not come from the speaker, would you consider it cause of fallacy? So when 2 events occur after one after the other, it is a common pitfall or a common human tendency to assume that there is a causal effect. This is called post hoc, ergo propter hoc. This translates to roughly after this, therefore because of this. A slight variation is the popular correlation causation fallacy. This is applicable when these 2 events are like not temporal, not sequential, if they are true simultaneous events. So 2 correlated events does not mean that they need to be causally bound to each other. For example, believing that your day will go well if you wear a lucky charm. So how many of you here believe in lucky charms or lucky rituals? So even some of the legendary cricketers did, like Sachin Tendulkar always used to put on his left pad before the right one, or Sourav Ganguly always carried a photo of his guru before stepping into the field, believing that it will help him score well. The sad thing is that sometimes we even do this to our kids, right? We reinforce them before going to the exam. We give them blessed pens or blessed lockets. Stop the reinforcing these tendencies. I request you, learn to have the confidence from their own preparation. And how do you counter, or how do you break out of this tendency of trying to find a causal effect? So separate out the events. So since these events are occurring in temporal order, ask, apart from time, are there any other factors leading to this result? So next is the bandwagon effect. This term originated based on the use of bandwagons for political campaigns in the earlier days. Even there is a phrase, jump on the wagon, which means like join me or join us. So this is a simple fallacy to understand. You believe in something because everybody else does. Now for example, you know how crazy people are about anything labeled remotely organic, right? But what they do not understand is organic means grown with a little pest inside. So before jumping onto the wagon, what you need to do is do your research, ignore anecdotal evidence or social media trends. I wouldn't say completely ignore, I'll say evaluate. So here is a famous advertising tagline from MasterCard. Maybe it's small, I'll read it out. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there is MasterCard. So this is a classical example of emotional branding, and apart from that, in a single sweeping statement, this brings in a sense of false dilemma, ignoring other feasible choices of competitor credit cards. So the tackling strategy is that explore the wide spectrum of possibilities in between. It's not black and white. There will be a gray area in between. Sunk cost. So after graduating from IIT Delhi and pursuing a master's from IMA, what if Chetan Bhagat had clung on to his banking career? We would never have known him perhaps. So this is a situation where you might fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. That is, you prefer to continue in your own current reality because of the investments you have made in the past. Investments could be money, your time, or the effort. So how do you break out of it? You build a vision on where you want to be. So your current reality versus the vision. Once you keep on building your vision, there will be a creative friction or creative tension which is building, and someday you will tip over. You will be able to go there and let go of the attachments holding you back. Okay, now that I think we have seen a couple of examples, let us see why does it matter? Why do we need to recognize the fallacies, or why do we need to stay away from them? So Dan is back. As part of the training to be a fallacy detective, Dan has learned the principles of fallacy dynamics, that is how fallacy operate in the society. So this might be a familiar equation from our physics classes. Let's recall a bit. It's simple. Force dot displacement gives work done, or in other words, change in energy. Our fallacies operate somewhat analogous to this. So fallacies, you can think of them as forces acting on a society, acting on a person. And in casual conversations, this might be unintentional, but when employed by agencies, they're usually with the negative intentions like manipulation or persuasion, boosting your ego or exploiting your vulnerability, or even as simple as winning an argument. So when you make a move, when you make a decision, most probably a poor decision unfortunately, based on the force of fallacy acting upon you, you end up with wasted energy. And wasted energy could manifest in different forms, like mental distress, waste of capital, or lost effort, fuzzy thinking, or even spread of misinformation. So now we have seen the psyche of an attacker, or the psyche of the fallacies. Let us also take a sneak peek into the typical victim profile. So why do we fall prey to fallacies? So first thing is cognitive laziness. Our brains are wired to take shortcuts while processing information. This is usually efficient, but sometimes it can lead to fallacies or errors in reasoning. For instance, we might rely on stereotypes for making quicker decisions, or we may jump to conclusion based on limited evidence or availability heuristics. Then the second point is confirmation bias. So we naturally have a tendency to gravitate towards information which confirm or affirm our pre-existing beliefs, which might be faulty, but we will be overlooking or dismissing contradicting evidence. The next point is emotional appeal. So fallacies often trigger emotions like fear, pity, or anger, or even a fear of the unknown, that is uncertainty, and makes us more vulnerable or susceptible to persuasion. And fallacies will provide us a sense of false comfort. You don't have to think, you don't have to worry, just do this. So, and sometimes people fall for these fallacies purely because lack of awareness, because we are not familiar with the structure of the fallacies. So this makes it harder for them to understand or identify. Now, social pressure or pressure to conform. We have an inherent desire to conform. We do not want to be outliers. We do not want to be called out or singled out in a society. So sometimes we accept things just to conform. And next point is patternicity. So our brains have this craving for patterns and connections. So when fallacies offer a seemingly simple explanation, even if it's wrong, we like it. Just, for example, if somebody says immersion of Ganesh idols during Ganesh Chaturthi in water. So immersion of the god's idols is actually purifying the water. In spite of knowing, okay, it has paints, it will have garlands of flowers, but we still like the idea of, oh, the god is purifying. So that is the craving which our brains are looking for. And coming to the last point, lack of reinforcement for critical thinking values. So our critical thinking, especially if you see in children, it ends within the perimeters of the schools or college. Once you come back, so you can apply all your critical thinking in your science or classes. Once you come back to home, again there is an encouragement to follow tradition or go behind blind traditional beliefs. So people learn to compartmentalize. And later on, they kind of stop thinking. This hinders the whole critical thinking tendencies. Okay, a quick recap. Until now, we have learned about several fallacies, understood the motivation behind the propagation of these fallacies, their potential negative impact, and our points, our weaknesses, or our vulnerabilities. So Dan is super happy about us doing this. So he has given us access to his personal library of case files where he has recorded all the suspected activities of fallacy crime lords. Some of these case files are like festival, career, which are touching upon the various aspects of our daily life. So now, the next section is going to be more like a hands-on workshop, and it's going to be like a rapid fire round, okay? We'll pull up a case file, we'll examine a statement, try to identify what fallacy this might be. You can do this in your mind with me. All you need is a little bit of focus, and this will be fast. So the first case file is on festivals. So the statement is, how can you celebrate Trishul Puram without elephants? Now this gives a false dilemma. It's like either you cancel the whole festival, or you let us have elephants in celebrating this. So it is ignoring the wide spectrum of possibilities for the celebration. Next one, setting off firecrackers during Diwali brings good luck by warding off evil spirits. This is a straightforward appeal to tradition because loud noises and air pollution have no scientific basis for bringing fortune. Now, you can't criticize the loud music during Durga Puja because you don't understand Bengali culture. So this is ad hominem because the statement fails to address the actual issue and it's targeted at the speaker. Fasting during religious festivals cleanses the body of toxins. This is again an appeal to tradition, and even some of these, there is very limited evidence supporting this claim. And even some of these fasts are like even without water, which is definitely not recommended. Now let's pull up the next case file, travel. So I met one road taxi driver. Probably all taxi drivers in the city must be rude. Now this is an example of hasty generalization, drawing a conclusion from a limited sample. Next thing, I'm sure we all must have done it some or the other point. My entitled leaves are going to expire sometime soon and I have to go somewhere. So this is an example of a sunk cost fallacy, where you need to consider whether you actually desire a vacation, you truly need a vacation now or not. Another example, everybody in social media is posting pictures from their exotic vacations. We should do it too. That's bandwagon effect. So if you go on trip with your friends on Diwali, you're not putting your family first. So this is a common appeal to pity kind of argument which you hear. And this is also inducing a false dilemma. So you can have a balance between your friends and the family. Okay, the next case file is on finance. So, I've already invested so much money into the stock. Even if it's losing value, let me hold on to it. So, this is an example of a sunk cost because you're relying on the past investment to make your choice on continuation. So, even if highly priced, I would like to go for this particular house because it is Vastu compliant. Now, this is an appeal to tradition because this architecture, it's a mere architectural tradition, but it does not scientifically guarantee peace or prosperity at your home. Now, everybody is investing in cryptocurrency. So, this is a bandwagon effect. So, several of my friends are opting for early retirement. I should too. So, here the question is, are you financially ready? Are you financially prepared to have an early retirement? People your age have already bought a home. So, this is again a bandwagon effect. You need to consider, apply both emotional and rational intelligence to make this decision. Now, coming to the last case file, coming to the second last case file, career. So, we have already built a life here. So, let's say you are presented with a better career opportunity and you need to move out of your current location. So, you say, no, it's not worth starting over, we are kind of settled here. Now, this rejecting a better opportunity based on the previous invested effects is an example of sunk cost. Now, career. So, this example is about women. So, you're either a career-driven woman or a good wife and mother. You can't be both. So, here we are ignoring the grey spectrum in between where you can strike a balance. And that's an example of false dilemma. Now, to children, we often say things like you shouldn't question your teachers because they know everything. This is an appeal to authority. In these times, teachers can be wrong and questions might always lead to learning. And now, sometimes we kind of threaten children like, see, I've already invested so much money in your coaching classes, you have to finish this course. So this again is coming from a sunk cost fallacy. You're neglecting the child's motivation. This is a common example, don't cry like girls. This is an appeal to ridicule because emotions are valid regardless of age or gender and suppressing emotions can be unhealthy. Coming to marriage. So there are actually a lot many fallacies in related to marriage. I'll pick a few. Like you just can't end an arranged marriage because like you talk to your families, you can make it work. So this is an appeal to tradition, thinking that arranged marriages are special or they are sacredly, inherently sacred, neglecting the possibility of compatibility issues. You must get married by a certain age because that's what our culture dictates. So here it's an appeal to tradition again, ignoring individual preferences and aspirations. Now, let's say this is an area of separation. So you're convincing the person to continue in a relationship, saying you're not strong enough to be on your own. You will never find someone better. Now this is an attack on the person, that is an ad hominem. Now if you don't have children, who will take care of you when you're old and alone? So this is an appeal to emotion. You're ignoring your individual preferences and you're attempting to enforce the idea that your children are your future caretakers. Or maybe things will improve magically after having a child. So this is wishful thinking fallacy. So you're ignoring the reality or the underlying issues and hoping that something magical would happen. We have been together for so many years and even we have bought a house, maybe we have kids. We can't just throw it all away. Let's just stay in this relationship even if it is unsufferable. So this is an example of sunk cost. Okay, so the rapid fire hence. Now we've seen how an avalanche of fallacies are occurring around us on a daily basis. So let us quickly explore Dan's anti-fallacy toolkit to see if there are some more useful things. So these are a set of general guidelines on how to respond to fallacies, and some of these points are inspired from the Socratic way of critical thinking. That is by asking probing questions and leading the other party to the conclusions. So let's quickly go through this. First step is to clarify. That is, you ask either the other person or you ask yourself, what do we mean by this term? Try to define the terms, identify the underlying assumptions, and also try to explain the logic. Evidence seeking. So ask, why do you believe in this? So what evidence do you have to support this? This can be used against hasty generalization. Consideration of alternate possibilities. So explore the probabilities of alternate choices or factors, offer counter examples if possible. And this can work against post hoc, slippery slope or false dilemma. The next point, 2 points are like about analysis and evaluation. So whenever you hear something, question the motivations behind it, evaluate the credentials. Whoever is speaking it, evaluate the credentials, try to get evidence supporting these claims. This can work as appeal to authority and appeal to tradition. And finally, you try to arrange those premises and see if it is logically leading to the right conclusion. Now, but in case, somewhere during this process, if you are stuck during critical thinking, why not ask ChatGPT or Gemini to lend a hand? A typical prompt could look like this, like identify the logical fallacies in this statement. Wearing this lucky charm bracelet will bring you luck during exams. So you can see it has given some pointers towards pause shock or appeal to false cause fallacy. Now, coming to the last slide, the fallacy. Suppose you are visiting a zoo and you see a crowd rushing in the opposite direction and they are shouting, oh, a tiger is on the loose. Do you want to take a moment, sit down and evaluate whether it's a bandwagon fallacy or do you want to run? I would suggest running because a poorly argued or fallacious claim may have a true conclusion. There might be an actual tiger. But we may not always have the time to critically analyze everything before making a decision. It is always a trade-off. I think all of us are using it on a daily basis. It's a trade-off between the consequences of the decision and the effort in thinking. So, what we can do is to strive to have a little bit of more clarity or refinement in our thinking. Because Dan thinks of fallacies like a pair of blurred glasses, clouding our judgment, distorting our reality. Hoping today's presentation has managed to wipe off a bit of that fog, enabling you to see reality with a sharper focus and make choices with greater clarity. I'd like to end with a note: be active proponents of shaping your reality every day and not passive victims of logical fallacies. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa, for your wonderful